Why is the mission important? Did it change in the crises? And it was not whether it's just this pandemic, but any new set of threats that are coming towards an organization. Are you still alleviating poverty? Are you meeting social services needs? Are you dealing with educating society? There's going to be some needs that are more urgent than others, but certainly refocusing the executive team on resource innovation and how your partners, your donors are an ally during this critical time is important.
I have often noted that standing still in a dynamic world is not an option. It is falling behind. And I think with the rapid change that's happening in our world now, that's even more so. It's also really important that we not assume what donors want. It's important to also acknowledge that fundraisers are your front line for charities, and they're the ones that often have the best and deepest connections with the donors and that are the best source for getting an idea of what it is that a donor wants. So being silent is not an option. You need to continue to be out there and letting your donors know what's going on with you and further building that trust. A recent national survey showed that 70% of Canadians still were looking for charities to continue fundraising.
You have a CEO and ED, a leader of some kind that's leading the organization, and you're probably that second in charge, that 2IC. And so the real challenge is demonstrating how your success and how moving forward in the organization is going to help them and help the organization succeed. Currently, with the crisis that's happening with the pandemic, lots of organizations are becoming risk adverse and they're a little nervous about reaching out and fundraising. And here is your prime opportunity to demonstrate that you've got a plan, you've got a method of moving forward, and you're going to help the organization.
There's no time like now is to share your organization's story and impact and honor the relationships that you've built. And so stay connected with your donors. And I think finally, all of this is about people and how we serve people. So have empathy. Position your ask as, for those who are in the position to give, we ask that you consider a gift. It's for those who may not be able to act, we understand that, but certainly having empathy as we're moving through. If you're on the cycle, it's time to ask, then certainly money drives mission. Go ahead and ask.
We're used to dealing with amazing superlatives, like the biggest and the boldest. And so I look at that suffix as being one of the best examples with practical tips, EST. E, I think, establish connections. You need to continue to reach out and establish connections with your donors. Where those are, perhaps you can broaden and hand over even more connections. So a fundraising officer could introduce a program officer and deepen that connection with the organization. S, I think you could survey people, survey your constituent base, survey the public, get a better sense of what is the donor satisfaction with your organization and stewardship. How does the public prioritize your programming and offering? And are there differences pre and post-pandemic that you might want to take into consideration? And T, test. There are so many important things that you could be testing. You can be testing your asks. You can be testing different cases for support, the material, working in multimedia and engaging with your public and your donors or your user base with different mechanisms and different ways of representing your case and the mission that you do. All of that transparency builds trust, and that's what donors are looking for.
First, pull out that strategic plan. If you have one, and hopefully you do, pull it out and look through what were the key goals, what were the key objectives for this year. Sit down with your CEO and talk through them and make sure that you're on the same page. Yes, we're still trying to achieve this. We know this crisis is making things more challenging. We get that, but we're still trying to move forward as an organization. We still want to be successful, and we still have people who care about us. So this is what we're trying to do. Talk through that strategic plan and demonstrate what the impact of not doing anything would be. If we just stop now, How would that affect our mission? How would that affect the organization and the people we care about and we're serving? Demonstrate that impact, and then, yes, acknowledge those risks. What are the worst things that can happen? You could ask somebody for money and they'll say no. That's a risk. They may say, not at this time, I can't believe you asked. Fair enough. They might respond that way. Studies are showing, however, that people are continuing to give across Canada, and you can talk about that with your CEO. There's always going to be risks in fundraising. There's always going to be risks in moving an organization forward. Acknowledge that and then keep going. If you're still getting pushback and saying, it's not the right time, people aren't giving, people are out of work, all the challenges that are out there, we know they're there and they're real. They're real challenges. You're still getting pushback, offer to test. See if you can just take 10 donors that you can reach out to and measure response with, or send out a limited email appeal. And maybe it's not the broad-based one that you had intended, but send out a small one and test response. And then you can go back to your CEO, your ED, and say, look, people are giving, people are responding in this way. This is what we've learned. Now can we push it out further? Now can we expand to go further online?
Certainly, I know a client that I'm working with right now who's moving towards that initial reaction of needing to lay staff off to be able to move forward and deal with some of the very big issues that they're dealing with. And upon reflection, and then as we were working with them, they agreed not to lay off the staff and actually take that as an opportunity to get back down to some very critical, basics. And so what we were allowed to do with them and for them is to take a look at their database, do a database review, and take a look at key metrics and standards. And there were some trends in there that helped them create clarity to be able to move forward. And the Fund Development Committee is being quite effective in terms of really challenging what is the mission and the impact that they're trying to share, so that they're being clear and authentic with donors that will be coming to the table. And then talking about some of the exciting partnership opportunities that may be available that might not have been available through the crisis. What I'm thinking of is some of the things like McDonald's on a national level that would be taking a look at the supply chain and seeing that there's potatoes that potentially stagnating, and then doing a special fundraising initiative for the Red Cross with fries. Again, those creative opportunities can happen now because we're motivated for change, and we want to do something to help.
I've seen several examples of great leadership and pivoting during this pandemic. I've seen organizations that have been driven by case, those organizations that now have an opportunity to make a different kind of ask, or that are uniquely positioned at this point in time in a way that they haven't been otherwise. Perhaps they have a unique health angle that they can ask now that they wouldn't normally, and they can hold their educational ask until another day, because it will be there. So capitalizing on those unique opportunities that are presenting themselves now. I've seen organizations that have been really successful driven by timing, by letting the timing set a framework for what they're going to do. One organization in particular said, we're going to make a weekly ask. And so they've let that weekly timeline inform how they generate the case, how they produce it and send it out, what data they get back to analyze, what the results of that analysis are, and how it informs their next week's cycle.
The local college that has they typically only do a couple of appeals during the year, one spring and one fall. Their spring direct mail campaign is a big one for them. And just about the time it was about to go out, we went into self-quarantine. And we couldn't tell the same story that we planned to tell. It just wasn't gonna fit. But the college does have a counseling program that does a lot of its training online and through video, because they recognize that that is an effective way of learning for the type of counseling that they're doing. we were able to switch quickly and tell a new story that highlighted the online education that had been made possible through an earlier campaign that now was allowing more people to be trained on how to interact and how to do counseling online. We were able to both shift the education itself and also the story of this education to how do we help people who are stuck in their homes and need counseling, need connection, but can't go out to find that counselor, and how these new students were learning how to do that effectively. And the response has been, and the understanding from our donors has been, yeah, this is great. Another organization which has donors throughout North America and typically goes out and runs events in all these places, and obviously isn't able to travel, isn't able to connect to them in that same way. So they have launched a online or virtual book launch. Their founder is a writer and is just coming out with a new book. And so they connected with some major donors and said, here, we're going to have an exclusive virtual book launch for you. The founder's going to come on, read some sections, talk about his book, and we're going to share a bit about the organization. And it's only going to be a short event. You're going to get a chance to be the first people to hear from this new book and hear from your founder. They will follow up with each one of those in individual conversations, one-on-one, online, of course. They can continue to work and build these relationships online because they've established in this time a method of doing so.
We're going to be taking a look at, again, getting to the root of it all. We have a lot of metrics to be able to say most effective ways to fundraise, so cost of fundraising. We can dissect, slice and dice each section of it, whether it's your annual giving program, mid or major programs, full-on campaigns or planned giving programs. And that's the money side of the equation. But we're also wanting to measure the impact on people. And so being sensitive to the community in terms of empathetic with actual donors, where they are in the actual cycle and what our constituents actually need, I think we should really just focus in on impact. Measure impact of your cause. Are you able to deliver on service to the people who are counting on you to speak for them? But we're looking at the human side of what we're actually trying to change in society.
At this point, it's a good time for you to gauge what are your pre-pandemic numbers so that you have a benchmark to compare against. I think it's important to look at what have your trends been over the first 30, 60, 90, or perhaps looking at 180 days of the pandemic to know what are the trends that you're seeing with regard to the return on investment for the activities that you're doing. How does that compare to your pre-pandemic numbers? You can be looking at what are donor retention numbers, what's the percent of people that are responding, or the dollars that are responding to your asks. Are they increasing? Are they decreasing? What are those trends? Are you broadening the base? Are you dealing with a broader number of donors and gaining new constituents to your organization? Have you captured and engaged new people? But to think about the new skills and expertise that you have accumulated during this period. As we look at professionals becoming digital fundraisers and organizations that are innovating, these are things to know about yourself as well as your organization.
Benchmarks don't change. Whether before this crisis, during this crisis, or perhaps during the next crisis, we're still going to be measuring engagement. We're still going to want to know, are your supporters engaged with your mission and what you're trying to do and the work that you're doing? And we're going to measure that through donations. We're going to measure that through volunteering. And we're going to measure that through advocating on your behalf. So if you can develop that advocacy online, that's going to be important. The methods that these people may engage may change, but the benchmarks don't. You're still focused on how people can engage with your organization.